principal values, one of the portion in trigonometry that is extremely confusing for many people. So when we look at principal values, right, it's actually not difficult because most of the time in exams, you will only notice that it's a 1 mark question. So 1 mark question means you usually don't you have to use a lot of brain power, right? You don't have to use a lot of skills. You just probably can use whatever that is given in a question. Okay, so there are three main kinds of principal value questions, which is our standard question, the ones that can solve with my calculator. This is my favorite. The ones that I need to use a little bit of thinking power, which is without a calculator. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this is going to be in video number 1, video number 2, and video number 3. So we're going to start with the basic of principal value and what is principal value first. Okay, but before we do that, I need all of us to be able to know the general shapes of our trigonometry graph. Okay, so I'm going to maybe just do it this way. Okay, so we're going to start with our sine graph first. Okay, so when we have our sine graph, automatically we have our y as well as our x. Okay, so I have my y here and my x-axis here. Okay, so we do in degrees, all right? Later then I'll talk about in radian, but we do in degrees first. So in degrees, automatically, we usually have this 360. I always tell my students to draw 360 first and then cut accordingly. Meaning after you cut again, and then you cut again. So this one here will be 90. This one here will be 270. So how does a sine graph look like? I always think of it as like you go up and then you go down, right? Like a roller coaster ride like that. So in a normal y equals to sine x graph, so this is a y equals to sine x, right? I should only have one cycle in 360. So I'll go up and then I'll come down. Okay, so it looks like that, just up and down. So what happens here is that I'm able to duplicate this on the left side. All right, so it will look like this. And then I'll be able to get this one as well. So it will duplicate accordingly. And then it will be this way. Okay, so just like that. So the values are all the same. All right, the values here will be 360. Here will be 180. Here will be 90 as well as a 270. Okay, but negative version. So this is negative 360, negative 270, negative 180, as well as negative 90. Okay, so we do in degrees. So what happens here is that what is the meaning of principal values? Because principal values, right? Okay, what we want to do is we want to find the x values. All right, so how do you find the x value? You always bring over the sign. So when you bring over the sign, right, what happens here is that it becomes sine inverse x. All right, so it will be inclusive. Like what's the maximum and what's the minimum it can be. So what you do is for sine, right, we can look at the positive, negative. We just look at what's the minimum value it should be here, and then what's the maximum value it should be. So all you need to do is just help me to read off so your minimum value is -1, your maximum value is 1. So what are the corresponding x values from here? So when you have your corresponding x value, it will be this one here. Why is it like that? Okay, so it will be this line here as well as this line here. Okay, so what we have here is that this one will be -90 as well as 90. Okay, so just give me the x values where you take the most and the biggest and the smallest x value from there. So a lot of times as students, right, okay, what we will do is we'll just memorize this one. Okay, but if you suddenly forget, just sketch out your entire sine graph again. Then you can see. So it's here to here. Okay, because -1 to +1, so you just want -90 to 90. All right, so we can also change this. If let's say I need to write this in the, what do you call that? In the radian mode, right? So in the radian mode, what happens here? What is 90? 90, so pi is 180 ma, correct? So this is pi over 2, and this is negative pi over 2. So this is the first kind of question where they just typically ask you, right? Oh, what's the principal value of a sine graph, for example? What's the principal value of cosine or even tangent, right? So it's just simple from here. Just regurgitate and then remember this one. So either in degree or in radian. Okay, for cosine, it's going to be slightly different because for cosine, we don't actually look at the negative portion. So cosine is like a basin, right? Like that. So this part here is 360. But the logic is the same. 360 in the middle is 180. So what's your principal value? You go your maximum and your minimum. So you just need to stop here. Okay, you just need to stop over here like that. So that means if you're going to see, right, it will be from here to here. So that's why in this case, this one will just be your 0. So your principal value, that means it can take 0 until, so I'll put cosine inverse x, okay? Inverse, it just means that theta lah, the angle, all right? So the angle, so just put cosine inverse. Okay, and then this one here will be 180. So that means if let's say I were to look at this, okay, if I were to look at this thing here, I don't put in, let's say the question asked me in terms of radian, right? In terms of radian, then pi will be 180. Okay, can I? Okay, actually, I think if let's say I were to already write this, right, it might be clearer that I actually put sine inverse y because I'm finding the angle lah. Okay, but this is a small issue from here just because we were looking at the graph, but most of the time the questions will ask you very straightforward which one. Later we will see examples later, okay? Okay, tangent graph is one of the more irritating graphs because tangent graphs have asymptotes, right? So asymptotes are just dotted lines. The curve can go very, very, very close, but it cannot touch the line. So your tangent graph looks like this. It goes up. Okay, this one will be like that. This one will be like that. And then the last one will be like that. Okay, so if I have my value, this one over here, 360. This one over here, 180. Then what we have here is that automatically this one, the dotted line, the asymptote is 90. This is 270. So you see, for sine graph, this is one cycle, right? The period is 360. For cosine graph, one cycle, period also 360. How do you tell one cycle? See, this is one set. This is another set. So for tangent graph, the period is only 180. That's a special part, okay? Okay, so then we go back. So tangent graph works similarly to sine graph. We will look at the negative side one. So if I were to draw it, this side here will be this way. Okay, then repeat accordingly, right? So how will we see the repeated one? We see from here to here. Because minimum all the way to the maximum. But one thing you note is they never touch, right? So because they never touch, what happens here is that you have negative 90. Okay, I just put tangent inverse x, okay? Okay, so tangent inverse x. Then, right, this one here, right, is 90. So a lot of us will do it this way because I said it's similar to sine graph, right? Because it never touch, I have to remove. So this is the thing that you need to take note. This one, tu dah. This one and this one. It's the different one, right? Because this one is inclusive, but this one is non-inclusive. Okay, so last time when I was a student, the easier way out was to memorize. Okay, but now we can see what's the reason. So you're taking the x values, which is the angles, where you have all the y values, your -1 to 1 or your negative infinity to infinity. So this is my principal value, the idea of it. Okay, so a typical 2 questions will be just like that. Okay, state the principal value of this and principal value of this. So if they never say whether it's degree or radian, right, then we got nothing to worry, correct? So either one, usually I just prefer to put it in degree, but this is personal preference. So for cosine one, right? So for cosine, you just need to remember it's all the positive side. So look at the graph. So from here and here, right? So just take the deltas from there. So 0, inclusive. So you follow this, just write this down, cosine inverse x, then like that. Okay, and then 180. This is for the cosine one. Then for the sine one, remember we're looking from here, here to here. So negative 90 all the way to 90. Okay, so negative 90, then put over here sine inverse, and then this one here will just be 90. Okay, so I call this the regurgitation type of question. That means before you sleep, the day before you sleep, the day before exam, before you sleep, right? You just go and memorize 1, 2, 3. Okay, but hopefully this helps you to not memorize but understand. Okay, but memorize is the faster way out, so it's up to your personal preference. Okay, so this is the first kind of trigonometric question.